The clock was nearing midnight when Dr. Evelyn Harper finally bade farewell to her weary colleagues and stepped into the hospital elevator. The central hospital parking lot, vast and mostly deserted at this late hour, held only a few scattered vehicles belonging to on-call doctors. Evelyn's eyes burned with exhaustion after enduring a grueling 16-hour shift, yet another marathon day spent deflecting the ache of solitude by immersing herself in work. At 65, Evelyn was one of the most esteemed cardiologists in the hospital. Her reputation forged through decades of relentless dedication and the lives she had saved. But over the past 6 months since her husband Daniel had left, she had become a mere shadow of her former self. What once was a calling, a passion, had transformed into a fortress, a barrier shielding her from the deafening silence of the empty apartment awaiting her return. As she walked toward her car, the overhead lights of the parking lot seemed to blur and spin, the world tilting dangerously around her. Her legs weakened suddenly. She reached out to steady herself against a nearby concrete pillar. But gravity had its grip, her knees buckled, and she crumpled to the cold asphalt. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was the moonlight filtering through a drifting veil of clouds, unusually bright and haunting. "Dr. Harper, can you hear me?" The familiar voice of her colleague, Dr. Elena Marquez, pulled her back from the edge of unconsciousness. Evelyn blinked several times, trying to orient herself amid the sterile white walls, the rhythmic beep of a heart monitor, and the sharp scent of antiseptic. She was lying in a hospital bed, the very hospital where she had dedicated more than 30 years of her life. "What happened?" she croaked, her throat raw and dry. "You collapsed in the parking lot," Elena explained gently. "Extreme exhaustion, severe dehydration, and dangerously high blood pressure. Your body was sending clear warnings. It's time to rest." Evelyn tried to sit up, but Elena's hand stopped her firmly. "Don't even think about it. You'll be under observation for at least 48 hours. We've already contacted your children." At the mention of her children, a sharp pang of guilt stabbed through Evelyn's chest. Since Daniel's funeral, she had slowly but surely distanced herself from Lawrence, Audrey, and her 5 grandchildren. Missed calls and cancelled family gatherings piled up like stones on her heart. Hours later, Lawrence and Audrey entered her hospital room. The worry and relief in their eyes were unmistakable. "Mom, you can't keep pushing yourself like this," Audrey said softly, taking her mother's wrinkled hand into her own. "You and Dad used to talk about slowing down, about finally enjoying life after all those years of sacrifice. But now you're working yourself to death." Evelyn's voice cracked. "Work is all I have left." Lawrence, always the pragmatist, stepped closer. "Mom, we all miss Dad every single day. But he wouldn't want to see you destroy yourself like this." 3 days later, Evelyn was discharged with strict orders, a minimum of 3 months off work. The hospital director, who had known both Evelyn and Daniel for decades, was adamant. She needed to confront her grief head-on if she was ever going to return to the life she had once loved. Back in her apartment on the 10th floor, a place that had once felt like home, Evelyn felt trapped. The building was only 10 minutes from the hospital and had been their home for nearly 20 years, but now every corner echoed with memories of a shared life. Dragging herself down the hallway, she reached the master bedroom. The right side of the bed remained untouched, Daniel's pillows still arranged just as he liked them. Though his scent had long since faded from the sheets, Evelyn could still summon it in her mind, a mix of aftershave and the musty aroma of the old books he treasured. Seeking distraction, she opened the windows wide, inviting the crisp autumn breeze inside. The sounds of the city spilled in with the wind, distant honking, muffled conversations, and the unceasing hum of a metropolis that never slept. The next morning, after a night of restless sleep, Evelyn made a difficult decision. It was time to confront Daniel's wardrobe. Audrey had suggested it weeks ago, but Evelyn hadn't been ready. Now, with tentative hands, she opened the heavy oak doors. Inside, the perfectly pressed dress shirts, carefully folded sweaters, and meticulously aligned shoes were exactly as Daniel had left them. He had always been fastidious about his belongings, a stark contrast to the disordered chaos on Evelyn's side of the closet. Slowly, she began sorting his clothes into two piles, one to donate, the other to keep as mementos. Each piece carried a memory: the navy blue tie Daniel had worn at Lawrence's wedding, the thick wool sweater he'd bought during their week-long trip to a remote Scottish cabin, where they had spent nights staring up at a sky ablaze with stars. When she reached his favorite brown tweed coat, Evelyn hesitated. It had been a gift she gave him on their 20th anniversary, and it had aged like fine wine, every worn spot a story. Clutching it to her chest, she allowed herself to cry for the first time in weeks. Her body shook with sobs, and the faint scent of Daniel still embedded in the fabric flooded her with bittersweet memories. When the tears subsided, she noticed something tucked in the inside pocket, a small brass key accompanied by a folded piece of paper, written in Daniel's unmistakable handwriting. Acacia Street, 278. Evelyn sat down on the edge of the bed, confusion swirling through her. She didn't recognize the address, and the key didn't match any they owned. Then, suddenly, it all came rushing back. On the morning Daniel died, he had called her at the hospital, his voice alive with excitement. "I have a surprise for you, my love," he'd said. "Something we've talked about for years. I can't wait to show you when you get home." Those were the last words she heard from him. That night, she'd found Daniel collapsed in their kitchen, the massive heart attack that stole him away before he could reveal his secret. The surprise had been buried beneath the tragedy until now. That evening, Evelyn researched the address. It was in a quiet residential neighborhood about 40 minutes from downtown, a place known for large properties with sprawling gardens and beautifully preserved older homes. The next morning, Evelyn dressed with more care than she had in months. She chose a light blue blouse Daniel always said matched her eyes, brushed her silver hair neatly back, and applied a touch of lipstick. The car's GPS guided her hands on the wheel as her mind wandered through endless possibilities. What had Daniel planned? A romantic dinner? Concert tickets? He was always an incurable romantic, even after all their years together. As the cityscape gave way to leafy streets lined with majestic trees forming a golden autumn canopy, Evelyn felt her heart quicken. She arrived at Acacia Street, the houses spaced far apart, gardens sprawling, the air crisp and fragrant with fall. Her destination was a charming two-story house with a wide porch that wrapped around its facade. The garden, though slightly overgrown, still bloomed with old roses, hydrangeas in hues of blues and purples, and unopened camellia buds promising spring's arrival. A winding stone path led to the front door, flanked by quaint solar lanterns. The house looked like a dream from a storybook. Soft yellow walls, generous white-framed windows, and a dark wooden door inset with stained glass. On the porch, an old wooden swing swayed gently in the breeze. With a pounding heart, Evelyn fitted the brass key into the lock. The door clicked open, revealing the house's quiet secrets. Inside, the living room was dim but warm, sunlight filtering through drawn curtains. Evelyn groped for the light switch, and when the room flooded with light, she had to catch her breath. Hardwood floors gleamed beneath a natural stone fireplace. The furniture was minimal: a sofa draped in a white sheet, a few chairs, and a solid oak dining table. In the center of the table rested a crystal vase holding a bouquet of dried, faded flowers. Next to it lay a brown envelope embossed with a logo of a local real estate agency. With trembling fingers, Evelyn opened the envelope. Inside were the deed to the house, registered in Daniel Harper's name, dated 3 weeks before his death, and a handwritten note. Dear Mr. Harper. As requested, the flowers have been placed on the table for the surprise reveal to your wife. The keys are with you, and the house is ready to be occupied. We appreciate your trust and wish you much happiness in your new home. Evelyn sank into a nearby chair, tears blurring her vision. This was Daniel's surprise, the home with a garden they had dreamed about for retirement, far from the city's noise but close enough to visit their grandchildren. A place to grow old together, cultivating flowers and memories. "What do I do now, Daniel?" she whispered to the quiet room. "How can I live here without you?" As if answering her, a beam of sunlight broke through the window and illuminated a small photo album resting on the mantelpiece, one she hadn't noticed before. She opened it to find a lifetime laid bare. On the first page, a photo of them young and radiant on their medical school graduation day. On the last, a recent picture from Daniel's 70th birthday, surrounded by their children and grandchildren. Among the pages was a sealed letter, written in Daniel's familiar script. With shaking hands, Evelyn unfolded it. Asterisk, my dear Evelyn. We are finally here in our dream home. I spent months searching for the perfect place for us to begin the next chapter. Remember our Sunday drives when you'd sigh passing through this neighborhood and say, "One day." That day has come. I know work has been your life as it was for me. But after decades of caring for others, it's time to let life care for us a little. I picture us here on this porch, you with a book in your lap, me scribbling those amateur poems you pretend to like. The grandchildren running through the garden in summer, Lawrence mastering the grill, Audrey telling us about her latest exhibition. Life is too short to postpone happiness. With all my love today and always. Daniel asterisk. Evelyn spent the day wandering through each room, imagining the life they could have shared there. Upstairs were 3 bedrooms, one for them and 2 ready to welcome grandchildren. In the basement, Daniel had started a woodworking workshop, his new hobby. At dusk, she sat on the porch swing, watching the sun sink behind the trees. Away from the city's relentless noise, she heard birds singing and felt the gentle caress of the evening breeze. In that peaceful moment, she made a decision. 3 weeks later, the downtown apartment was empty. Evelyn's belongings had been moved to the dream house Daniel had prepared. Her children, initially surprised, soon understood and supported her choice. She transformed the 3rd bedroom into a small office, volunteering a few days a week. Medicine was still part of her life, but balance was restored. The garden bloomed again with help from a local gardener who taught her the art of pruning roses and transplanting seedlings. Her hands, once trained for surgical precision, learned a new delicacy. On Sundays, the house was filled with life. Lawrence, his wife and 3 children, Audrey with her husband and twins. The dining table, once barren, now struggled to hold all the laughter and food during boisterous family meals. One spring afternoon, nearly a year after finding the key, Evelyn planted tulips along the driveway. Audrey sat beside her on the grass. "You know, Mom, I was so worried about you after Dad died. It felt like you gave up on living, too." Evelyn smiled at her dirt-streaked hands, so unlike the pristine ones she once kept. "For a while, I really did," she admitted. But Daniel's final gift was more than this house. It was a chance to live again, to stop waiting and start. Audrey nodded. "He'd be proud." Evelyn looked up at the bright blue sky, feeling a gentle warmth settle over her soul. For the first time in years, she believed it was true.